Hello everybody, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. In today's video, I will be showcasing Palantir. Specifically, I will be talking about Palantir's expansion into the healthcare system, both private and government, both domestic and abroad. I'm going to give you a lot of examples of how Palantir is expanding into the healthcare sector. And I'm going to showcase an article that came out earlier today, which is talking about the NHS England Federated Data Service. And they're literally saying that they're going to roll over existing Palantir work because, as you know, Palantir has been working with the NHS England. They already had 2 former contracts, and they're going to be using Palantir's work and Palantir's former healthcare services into this new federated data platform. Now, this does not mean 100% that Palantir is going to be getting this contract, but for all intents and purposes, we at the Palantir community and most of the world do believe that Palantir is going to get this contract. Whether you're pro or con Palantir, and there are a lot of articles that are coming out right now that completely hate Palantir, and how can you give this contract to Palantir, and how could they even be bidding on this contract, blah, 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 yada, yada, so on and so forth. Now, this is going to be a massive, nearly $500 million contract for Palantir over the next 5 years, if they get it, and possibly a total of $1 billion over the next 10 years. But I think this is going to be a much bigger opportunity for Palantir that absolutely exceeds this small amount of contract. And I understand what I'm saying because this contract is massive, but I think it's only the start. So in today's video, I will be showcasing the NHS, I will be showcasing the NIH, I will be showcasing private practice cooperation and partnerships with Palantir, and I will be talking about Palantir's Federal Advisory Board, not to mention some ex-NHS employees that they hired. Hopefully, this is going to make you understand how Palantir is expanding, how Palantir does grow, and how Palantir is going super aggressive for the entire healthcare system, whether it's supply chain distribution or reducing wait times or PPP distribution or managing millions of data points for a federal government during wartime or non-wartime, so on and so forth. So if this is something that you can get behind, if you want a brief history about Palantir's healthcare system and how they're getting into the healthcare system and their supply chain, so on and so forth, I think this video is going to be really good for you and you're going to get a lot out of it. With that said, please sit back, relax. Before we start and before you grab your coffee, I'm going to take a moment to sip mine. Can you please give me a comment down below that just says algo? And that's going to be for the algorithm. It really does help with YouTube, so they actually push my content to the top. With that said, let's get right into the video. Right, in the article earlier today, it says documents from the NHS England show service providers by Palantir, which began as a COVID-19 emergency, will become part of the, and I quote, controversial £360 million federated data platform service. It's set to launch a delayed procurement in the next coming week. So basically, the NHS England Federated Data Service is going to launch in the next coming weeks. It was extended by a couple of months. We were supposed to get a winner, I believe, in June or September, and this was extended that we were going to get some answers closer to the end of the year, early next year. So I'm glad that we're actually going to get some answers. Now, Palantir does have something called a land and grab, as they were mentioning in the article today. Palantir initially made a bid to work with the NHS for £1. They made this bid during COVID-19, and they actually expanded it to get a huge contract of £23 million. Now, Palantir always starts small and they expand. This is Palantir's MO. I'm not going to be apologetic for that. And I think that this is great. You essentially give your services for free or nearly free at a very affordable price, and then you expand your services and you offer more in different departments, more bang for your buck, and obviously you get a larger contract. That's the whole point of business, and Palantir is doing it really, really well in my personal opinion. And the NHS spokesperson, and I quote, says, the data collection referred to as part of the service provision under the NHS England's existing contract with Palantir for the provision of data platform, which is a software platform foundry for the secure, reliable, and timely processing of data to enable NHS decisions makers to best plan use of resources and improve patient care. Those services are within the scope of the requirement for the federal data platform and would be transitioned to the federal data platform as part of its implementation in place of the existing platform. What they're saying is Palantir already helps with the federated data platform. Palantir already helps with the healthcare system in England, and Palantir will continue to help, and the work that they've already been doing is going to be transitioned into the new federated data system. Whether Palantir is going to get the contract or not, that still remains to be seen. However, the work that Palantir is currently doing will be transitioned into the new system for better, for worse. Whether Palantir gets it or not, you guys are going to be stuck with Palantir, and you guys should probably say thank you, because for all intents and purposes, Palantir is a freaking powerhouse that does really amazing things. Now, that's the first part of this video. What I wanted to do in the second part of this video was actually showcase to you Palantir's commitment to getting the healthcare sector on lockdown, Palantir's commitment to expand in the healthcare sector in many different subcategories of healthcare. I'm going to concentrate on three things. The first part is going to be NHS, the second part is going to be the NIH, and the third part is going to be a supply chain partnership between Palantir and Concordance. Okay. The NHS, I gave you guys a brief history. Besides for this, Palantir is doing massive strides in order to try to get this actual contract. They hired two high-ranking officials from the NHS, was Indra Joshi, the NHS's former head of artificial intelligence, and Harjit Delawali, former deputy to Ming Tang, NHS's England's data chief. So somebody in a high-ranking capacity for being data chief, like the data, and for the AI intelligence. So these are really, really high hires, and people are saying, hey, Palantir is hiring these people in order to try to sway, in order to try to get this contract. However, what I'm saying is, if we do get this contract, well, it's going to be very easy to transition if we already have people that can bridge the gap between Palantir and the NHS. And if we happen to hire people from the NHS, how is this a bad thing? How is this going to give us any worse impact? How are we going to do a worse job? We're not. We're going to do that much of a better job. And this happens every single day in corporate America. This happens every single day in big business. This happens every single day in poaching under government. And this happens every single day, poaching into government officials, poaching into government subsectors and different departments. It happens all the time. So I think this is actually a very smart move. Now, the NIH. The NIH is essentially the counterpart of the NHS. The NIH stands for the National Institute of Health. The NIH, Palantir started working with them in 2018. They started with a small $7 million contract. Then in 2021, they got a one-year contract for $36 million, which ended up being extended to a $59.5 million contract for 2 years. Finally, in September of 2022, Palantir got a massive $65 million contract. Now, these contracts are not in the same exact department. These contracts expand on different things that they're doing within the department and sub-departments of that department. I'm just trying to give you guys a paper trail of how Palantir starts small and then they expand in the NIH, right now in the NHS. Also, Palantir, they made a huge partnership with Concordance. Concordance is the largest private supply chain distribution for healthcare. And they're going to be using Palantir's Foundry software as a plug-and-play formula, as a plug-and-play solution to be able to control the supply chain from point A to point B, C, so on and so forth, the beginning, manufacturer, to the end user. While using Palantir, they're going to be working not only with private sector, but also with the public sector. So they actually work in the government capacity and they also work in a non-government capacity. Now, Shyam Shankar, who's the chief operating officer of Palantir, he did have an interview on CNBC. This interview happened probably around 3 or 4 months ago off the top of my head. And they asked, hey, where do you see Palantir growing? How do you see Palantir expanding? What markets are they going to get into? And he basically said that supply chain for healthcare and healthcare in general is essentially an untapped market. It's huge. The total addressable market is ridiculous over there, and Palantir is aggressively fighting to get a large portion of that total addressable market. So as you can see, I'm establishing a history of Palantir starting small and expanding, and Palantir really focusing their efforts on the supply chain of healthcare and healthcare in general. In the future, as Palantir is going to be working with these companies, I do truly believe that they're going to prosper. They're going to make a lot of margins out of this. And I think what's good for the geese is good for the gander. As they're going to expand their services with the NIH and the NHS, they are going to be working with the private sector. Because if you're good enough to literally revamp the entire federal government when it comes to healthcare system, and I believe that the NHS England or UK's healthcare system is the largest healthcare system in the world, like a government healthcare system in the world, that if you could do something with them and you could make them more efficient, and there are reports showing that Palantir does in fact make you more efficient, that they are drastically reducing wait times, there is data over there, right? There are reports, then I believe that Palantir is going to be able to work with a lot of private companies like enormous hospitals, so on and so forth, in many different countries, many different jurisdictions. And finally, I wanted to note that Palantir has something called a Federal Advisory Board, and the Federal Advisory Board is where they hire really high officials. I'm talking about like top 100 people in the world, like admirals and generals and politicians, so on and so forth. Really high-ranking people within the government of all different types of government, and essentially they're advising them what they can do better to help the government. What can they do better to assist the government and all of these different departments? So they made 3 massive hires recently. They hired a woman called Deborah Briggs. She's the former coordinator to the White House Coronavirus Task Force. She was also the former ambassador at large to the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief Program to support HIV and AIDS treatments and prevention. They also hired a guy called Greg Simon, who's the former executive director of the White House Cancer Moonshot Task Force and the Biden Cancer Initiative, co-founder of the Melanoma Research Alliance. And finally, they also hired a person called Gustavo Perna, a retired U.S. Army general, former chief operating officer of Operation Warp Speed. And all of this started from Operation Warp Speed. Both the NIH contract and the NHS contract started with the PPP and coronavirus distribution, so on and so forth. Now, Palantir is not doing good. Last time I checked, it's trading nearly at $7 even, and it's taking a shit like the rest of the stock market, like the rest of the crypto market, and like the rest of the real estate market. In reality, we're just in really bad times. When this stops, nobody knows. However, I am confident in Palantir. My dedication to Palantir does not waver. I think it's an absolute powerhouse. I think it's an absolute monster, and really, they do have this massive moat. Just, it takes a little bit of time for them to get moving. Obviously, I wanted Palantir to go to the moon. It's not working out as planned so fast, but that's okay. You got to remain patient. I'm connecting the dots. I'm looking at what Palantir does. And if you can build a story, a history, as I'm doing in these videos, for me, it all makes sense. With that said, I'm not a financial advisor. This is purely entertainment, education at best. Everything I should say here is for you to do your own research, is for you to get an idea of something, and then you guys make your own decisions as big boys and girls. With that said, please do give me the likes, do give me the subscribe, please do give me the comments down below. This really does help me. I got a massive Palantir video coming out next week, and if you can't wait until next week, please click on one of these videos right here where I go over some more Palantir news. I'm sure you guys are going to be happy. Thank you very much and have a great day.